Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone's doing great. Share my screen real fast. And we'll get some of this out of the way so we can hear from our speaker. Again, I'm glad to see everyone. I hope everyone's having a great afternoon. Just before we get started, I wanted to just have some Zoom tips for everyone. And to let everyone know that this training is being recorded so that we can share the link with you afterwards. Please make sure you use the mute while we're presenting, just to keep the background noise down so that we can hear Jennifer well. And if you're having bandwidth issues, please feel free to just keep your video off. And that way, hopefully bandwidth will keep everything going for you smoothly. Don't hesitate to ask your questions in chat. At the end, Jennifer will answer questions. And if you would rather ask them out loud, you can do that, but you can also type them, and some moderators such as myself can read them for Jennifer to answer. There is a live transcript that Zoom offers going on right now. So on the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see CC. And that should hopefully help you activate the or be able to see the subtitles. With that, if the subtitles are distracting, you should also be able to either click show subtitles to see them or hide subtitles if you don't want to see them, if it's distracting. You can also set your subtitles to a different size by using the little caret or arrow next to in the CC options. That way you can set it to be bigger. Feel free to use the reactions on your Zoom bar. You should see a little smiley face with a plus sign. If you click on that, you should see several options. You might see clapping, and you might see a thumbs up. So if you agree with something, feel free to use those. If something's funny, you can use the emoticon that's laughing. There's also a raise hand. So when we get to the questions and answers at the end, feel free to use the raise hand. And that way we can call on you, as well as we'll try to pin you so we can see you and Jennifer on screen. One more note on the view on your Zoom screen at the top, you should see view options, and this allows you to kind of customize what you see. So you might be on gallery. If you see I guess sometimes on Zoom, people call it the Brady Bunch or the Hollywood Squares view, where you see everybody. If once Jennifer gets going, if you want to just see Jennifer, you can adjust that to speaker view. And you can also, you should be able to adjust it where you see side by side. So you can see Jennifer's slides and her as well. I think I got it all that I think. If anyone has any questions, throw it in the chat. And yeah, I think get my slides here to go. Again, the DD Council, or the Developmental Disabilities Council of Oklahoma, and the Department of Libraries, Oklahoma Libraries, just welcome you to today's presentation. I know we're both really excited that you could just take the time and learn from our speaker. We're both agencies are on Facebook and Twitter, as well as Department of Libraries is on Instagram and LinkedIn. So definitely keep up with us on any of those channels for events, things going on. I know we like to help each other out. And a quick word, we've been working together, and the Developmental Disabilities Council has purchased the book that Jennifer will be speaking about, that was written for public libraries in our state. So we're really super excited to be able to get that out. And I think the only other thing I'd like to mention is that I'm going to turn it over to one of our youngest council members on the Developmental Disabilities Council, Lindsay Spoon, to introduce our speaker.
Let me get it up here. Okay. Welcome to today's presentation. The DD Council and the Department of Libraries is excited to hear from Jennifer Keelan-Chaffins today. Jennifer Keelan-Chaffins is a passionate disability advocate and advocate for disability rights. She joined the disability movement at the age of 6, and at the age of 8, she participated in the famous Capitol Quarrel protest to support the passage of Americans with Disabilities Act. In 1990, she received the Americans with Disability Act award from the Task Force on
On the rights
and empowerment of Americans with disabilities. Jennifer received her GED in 2002 and Associates of Arts degree in 2008, both from the Arapahoe Community College before earning a BS in Family and Humans Development from Arizona State University in 2017. Today, she is an educator and motivational speaker, and together with her new illustrated biography, All the Way to the Top, How One Girl's Fight for Americans with Disabilities changed everything. Jennifer does educational speaking presentation to teach children.
Jennifer.
With that, we welcome Jennifer.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm so glad to be with you and speaking with you today. One of the cool things that you may not know about me is I am the brand ambassador for Mobility of Denver and Vantage Mobility International. And I'm going to start out my presentation with a wonderful video that will show you guys how I use my wheelchair van, and we're going to take a trip to the stables to see my horse AJ. And then after the video, I will go ahead and start the presentation.
Are you ready to go?
Yep, let's go.
All right.
So, hi guys. A lot of kids ask me how I get my wheelchair into my vehicle. So I'm going to show you how I do that today. So I'm going to go out this door, down my ramp, and then I'm going to go through my garage. So, this is my van, and I am actually the brand ambassador for Mobility of Denver and Vantage Mobility International. And this is their wheelchair accessible, affordable van for caregivers. And so my mom is actually the driver for this vehicle because I'm unable to drive. So I'm going to show you how it works. So I use this key fob to unlock the car. Then I'm going to use this key fob to pull down my ramp. And so, as you can see, there is a ramp in this vehicle that will allow me to pull my wheelchair into the car. And then once I'm inside the vehicle, I'm able to pull my chair into the passenger side of the car. And then, once I do that, what my mom will do is she will use the tie downs to tie my wheelchair and secure my wheelchair into the vehicle. And so this is how I get into my car and I'm able to go places and use my wheelchair accessible vehicle. Hi guys, it's Jennifer again. You guys are in for a special treat. I'd like to introduce you to my horse, AJ. As you guys know from the beginning of the book, horses have been a big part of my life. And one of the first things that they teach you in owning a horse is how to groom them. So I'm going to show you how I do that today with AJ in my standard chair. And as you can see, AJ is intently paying attention to me. I've had him for about 21 years, so he is quite used to this. Good boy. Whoops. Good boy. So this is his soft brush. And what I'm going to do, is I'm going to have Mom bring him up.
That a good man.
Good boy.
Don't want to bump into the thing.
And I'm going to start brushing him at his neck. Yeah, that's a good boy. And as you can see, he is absolutely loving this.
Oops.
And this is not just beneficial for me because it allows me to stand up, but it's also beneficial for him because it's a great bonding experience. I'm just gonna move forward.
Oh, he's got a bug bugging him. There shouldn't even be any bugs out here today, huh?
And then once I'm done with his neck, I will work my way down. All throughout his back. And I have been riding and around horses since I was 2 years old. And one of the neat things about horseback riding
Here, back up, buddy.
is that it is not only physically beneficial for me as far as relaxing my muscles and helping me with trunk control, but it's also very psychologically and emotionally benefiting. Because when I first started writing, it gave me a lot of confidence. And he is absolutely loving. And he also knows that he's going to get a carrot in the too.
He recognized that word. Carrot? A carrot? There'll be carrots.
Good boy. And so that's how I take care of AJ and Griffin. All right, I'm going to go ahead and continue with my PowerPoint presentation. And so here we go. Thank you so much for inviting me today to speak with you and share my story. My name is Jennifer Keelan-Chaffins. I would like to give a special thanks to Jennifer Randall of the Developmental Disabilities Council of Oklahoma for giving me this great opportunity. My sister Kaylee and I realized when we were very young that there were places that Kaylee could go, but I could not, due to the fact that those places were not wheelchair accessible, and I would be denied access because of my disability. For example, when my mom was trying to find a daycare center, she was told that they would accept Kaylee because she could walk, but that I would have to go to a separate daycare center because they were unable to take me due to my disability and there was no wheelchair access. So I attended a school named Tempe Center for the Handicapped, and my sister went to a different daycare center. When it came time for me to start kindergarten, the neighborhood school that I could see from my front yard was not wheelchair accessible due to the fact that there were no curb cuts or physical access that would accommodate my wheelchair, nor did the school have a special education program that could meet my needs. The same was true for public transportation. Kaylee, Mom, and I had tried to use the public bus to go downtown, but were told that the lift was bolted down and that it was only there for show, but not to use. Kaylee and I had experienced many forms of discrimination at a very young age and became aware of being separated because of my disability. And in this first slide, this is actually a picture of me and my sister Kaylee, and we are doing a protest in Atlanta to get wheelchair lifts on buses. And this is also where Kaylee and I learned sign language. And so we were signing one of the protest chants that we were learning. What do you want? Access. When do you want it? Now. So that's what Kaylee and I are signing in this picture. Please go to slide 2. I was introduced to disability rights when I was 6 years old. The disability rights group, ADAPT National, came to Phoenix, which was where I was living at the time, to protest the lack of wheelchair accessible buses. My mom's cousin, Tom Olin, and family friend, Diane Coleman, came to Phoenix to attend the protest and stayed at our house. They invited Mom and I and sister Kaylee to attend the protest and strategy meetings. And we were excited to see what the protests were all about. When I first met ADAPT, it was the first time that I had ever seen other people with disabilities who were just like myself, who were fighting for their civil rights and the right to be treated like everyone else with dignity and respect, and the right to have full and equal access to all areas of society. This is where I learned that having a disability could be very empowering. This is where Kaylee and I learned that separate is not equal, and Brown versus the Board of Education of 1954. And this is also where we learned about the 504 Rehab Act of 1973 and about the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. To Kaylee and I, that meant that we did not have to be separated from each other. We could go to the same school together and ride the bus together. Both Kaylee and I decided that we wanted to become involved in the movement. And by the end of the weekend, I was leading the protest through the streets of downtown Phoenix. And in this slide, this is a picture of me and my family attending our very first protest in Phoenix. And we are actually being interviewed by a reporter. And you can see here is my mom, myself, and my little sister, and my friend Bob. Please move to slide 3. At our second protest in San Francisco, we met many iconic leaders of the movement. This included Justin Dart Jr., father of the ADA, and members of the Disability Rights and Education and Defense Fund, or DREDF, including Judy Heumann, who's known for the 504 sit-in protest. We were introduced to the Task Force on the Rights and Empowerment of Americans with Disabilities, headed by Justin Dart Jr., which would be the beginning of the journey of the passage to the ADA. The task force had begun its mission by collecting testimony from people with disabilities and their experiences with discrimination. Included in the testimony were the expectations of what we would like to see in the ADA and what protections the ADA would be able to address. Thousands of participants from all 50 states were asked to share their stories. My family and I were invited to participate and gave our testimony. These oral and written testimonies would later be called the ADA Diaries and would assist in establishing a record of discrimination that Justin would eventually submit to Congress. And in this slide, this is a picture of me and Justin, and he is handing me a bouquet of carnations. And I think we're in a Washington, D.C. protest. Please move to slide 4. March 12th, 1990, the Capitol crawl. Even though the Senate had already passed an earlier version of the ADA, Congress was still stalling the passage of the ADA. In response to this delay, disability rights groups from across the country organized to come together in Washington, D.C. and use their voices to tell Congress why it was important to pass the ADA without further delay. This led to the Wheels of Justice March on Washington, D.C., the rally that was to follow, and led to the Capitol crawl. By this time, I had become a seasoned activist and had already been protesting for 2 years. When I decided to do the Capitol crawl, I realized that as one of the few young children who got to be so closely involved in this movement, I was not just representing myself, but I was representing my generation and future generations of kids with disabilities. So I was more determined than ever to make sure that I reached the top so that all of our voices would be heard. And this is one of the photos that I have showing my participation in the Capitol crawl. And it actually was really, really hot that day. Please move to slide 5. The ADA is now 30 years old, and although more public spaces are accessible, there's still more work to be done. Employment, education, housing, and assistive technology accommodations are definitely areas that we still need to work on in order to ensure that the ADA, IDEA, and 504 are being used to their fullest potential. And attitudinal barriers, bullying, and ableism are an even greater problem. So what can we do today? Well, people with disabilities are people just like you who want to be treated with dignity and respect. Encourage your family members, friends, and grandparents, all of voting age, to get out and vote. Vote to preserve the ADA. Vote for candidates who support the ADA, IDEA, 504, and all civil rights. If you see something that needs to change in your community due to the lack of accessibility, then a good place to start would be to Talk to your city and state leaders, your city mayors, your state governors, and your congressmen and women. Make them aware of the issue and why it needs to change. Tell them why the ADA is important to you and why we need to continue to recognize, enforce, and defend the ADA as a civil rights law for people with disabilities, so that people with disabilities can have full and equal access to the communities in which they live, work, and play. Everyone benefits from inclusive communities. Encourage teachers and schools to include disability civil rights history in their school curriculums. Most importantly, understand that the ADA is not just about physical access. It is also about personal empowerment and what it means to you and how it can empower you to use your voice to enforce and exercise your rights or the rights of your friends and family members and the people with disabilities that we interact with every day in our community. Remember, there is more to this law than what is written into it. We are the ones who give it its strength, and it is our voices that will ensure that this landmark civil rights legislation for people with disabilities continues for generations. Please move to slide 6. In the task force's final letter, Justin Dart Jr. and the task force says, celebrate the ADA, shout its message in living rooms, schools, churches, businesses, communities, governments, and public media. Implement the ADA. Keep the promise of the ADA by creating a cultural environment in which all people with disabilities can empower themselves as equal and productive participants in the American dream. Let us unite in action as never before. Together we have overcome, together we shall overcome. Please move to slide 7. And now I would like to talk about my book, All the Way to the Top. All the Way to the Top is my illustrated bibliography children's book about my involvement in the disability rights movement, as well as my participation in the Capitol Crawl from my 8-year-old point of view. I worked together with both Annette Bay Pimentel, the author, and Nabi H. Ali, the illustrator of the book, for 3 years. I also wrote the foreword for this book myself. So I think together, the 3 of us captured my 8-year-old voice perfectly. It does a wonderful job of opening the door to the conversation of the disability rights movement and teaching children to, please move to slide 8, how to recognize and handle bullying. The book says that I'm just a friend waiting to happen. So how does my younger self handle it when I'm being confronted with bullying? I focused on activities that I do really well with my classmates, like choir and music. It didn't matter that I had a disability because choir was an activity that I was really good at. And after a while, my classmates no longer just focused on my disability. Now I had a support system. Those that once bullied me were now my advocates and friends. Please move to slide 9. How to recognize discrimination. The book uses the word stop to illustrate being confronted with physical barriers and discrimination. Please move to slide 10. How to recognize accessibility. The book uses the word go to illustrate full inclusion, participation, and accessibility. Please move to slide 11. How to use your voice to create change. Never be afraid to use your voice, to speak up and speak out to create change. You don't have to be a grown-up to change the world. The people united will never be defeated was my favorite chant because to me, it meant that everyone could be included in joining our cause for freedom and equality. Please move to slide 12. The importance of the Capitol Crawl. The Capitol Crawl was a visual demonstration for Congress to show them what it is like for people with disabilities when they are confronted with physical barriers and denied access and denied their civil rights. Please move to slide 13. The importance of the disability rights movement and its part in American history. The disability rights movement is an important part of American history that is rarely discussed and taught in the classroom. I want to change that. I believe that kids will learn and be empowered by this important part of America's history. This is why I am so glad to be able to share my story with you today. I hope that my book has inspired you to speak up and speak out and use your voice to create change for a better, more inclusive world. And together we can continue the work for disability justice. Thank you very much.
Wow. That was amazing. Well done. So I guess now comes the time that we will ask if anyone wants to ask Jennifer any questions. Is that right, Jennifer? Are you ready?
Yes, I'll be able to take a few questions.
Okay. You guys will just use the raise hand feature in the reactions. It makes it a little bit easier to find all you guys. Looks like Lindsay has one. So Lindsay, I'm going to pin you on my screen. Actually, hang on. I need to do that with our speaker too. Lindsay. So we can see both of you guys. All right, Lindsay.
Okay, I actually have two, actually. What advice do you have for young people, especially like myself and even younger people who are wanting and who just started getting involved in legislative and disability rights advocacy?
Well, I would say, if you have something that you are passionate about, in particular, like a certain piece of legislation that you support, just like I said in my presentation, talk to your senators about your support and about the reason why you support this bill for people with disabilities. Let them know that this is important to you, and let them know why it's important to you, and why we need to continue to enforce the civil rights for people with disabilities and move forward in that way.
Then the other question I had is more related to your stand-up wheelchair. What benefits do a stand-up wheelchair provide you that are more than just standing up? Because I'm interested in getting one for myself.
I really love my standard chair because it does a lot for me physically. It helps with muscle control, in particular for me, because I have asthma and I have other conditions associated with my CP. It helps me manage those conditions, and it also has given me the ability to have a lot more physical strength as far as my legs and my lower body, especially since I'm getting older, and so I'm not able to use my shoulders as much as I used to when I was younger. So having that standard function where I'm able to bear weight on my feet without having to put so much strain on my upper body has worked wonders for me.
Thank you for answering those questions.
You're welcome.
All right, I think Will is next, and then Devin. Or Will.
Okay. I'm wondering how you feel about the reasonable accommodation and undue hardship language in the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Well, I think that for me, for me personally, because I've had to, use reasonable accommodations, especially when I was in college and in school, and even, navigating the physical environment. I think that reasonable accommodations are the things that are necessary and needed. And I also think that one of the things that I think about the undue hardship language in the Disability Act is, I think that in some level we need to recognize that we need to evolve some of that, and we need to recognize that some of that could be viewed as part of the reason why some entities are resistant to accessibility changes. And I think that that's part of the work that we still need to do, and we still need to be able to use our voices to move that forward. I think that even though we have a lot more physical access and a lot more accessibility, I think that there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, even in terms of accessibility access, because there are places, especially new construction, that aren't following ADA guidelines. And I think that this is one of the reasons why we need to come together as a community and say that first and foremost, the ADA is our civil rights law, and it is what allows us and to demand our civil rights and demand access and demand to be treated like everyone else. If there are entities that are not following the ADA, in particular with new construction, those are the things that need to change, and those are the things that we need to work on together as a community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My mouse, sorry. I'm trying to get Devin for you. All right, Devin Williams, and then Melissa, and then Alex.
My question for you, what was your experience after this took place? Like, what was your feeling toward this?
Well, even as a young child, I recognized that the passage of the ADA was a huge accomplishment for the disability community. But I also recognized that we still had a long way to go and a lot of work to still do. This is why, to me, it's important more than ever for us to continue to use our voices to create change and to bring to the attention of our government leaders some of the things that the disability community is still experiencing, as far as discrimination in housing, and just even discrimination in the educational setting, and discrimination in the work setting. This is why it's important that we continue to bring ADA to the forefront and continue to remind our government leaders who we elect, that the ADA is our civil rights law, and that that we will not stand for discriminatory practices either by entities or even by our government leaders. And so this is why we need to, continue to demand our civil rights and continue to demand the enforcement of the ADA itself, because it is our voices that give the ADA its strength. It gives, it is our voices that give the ADA its power. And so this is why it's important that we, speak up and speak out, especially now, since the ADA is now 30 years old. And so.
Awesome.
Thank you for answering my question. I greatly appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it looks like Devin is in his classroom. Is that right, Devin?
Yes, I am.
Oh. Let me get Melissa. Melissa, you're on.
Thank you. I hope this isn't an embarrassing question, but how do you afford all the different kinds of wheelchairs that you have? I mean, I know I have friends that are in wheelchairs, and it's like they can't get that kind of thing.
I completely understand it. I waited 10 years for my standard chair. And it was only after fighting for it and demanding it and having a superior medical team and physical therapists that went to bat for me that I got it. I had to fight for it. It wasn't, it wasn't given to me. I had to demand it and fight for it. And you also have to, have a good support system and have a medical team that will assist you fully in getting the equipment that you need. And so thanks to, fighting for it and demanding it and having a medical team that assist me in getting that equipment, I have it. But it took me 10 years to get that chair.
It just seems like there should be a way to provide those things for people.
It should be a lot easier than it is. And that's for sure. And that's one of the things that I think, especially in our healthcare system for people with disabilities, needs to change. I think we need a complete overhaul of those systems in order to get those things to change, and make it more money follows the person, make it more individually centered. For example, I'm the head of my medical team. My medical team knows that the ultimate decision starts and stops with me. And I'm the one that coordinates, my medical team. They know that that I'm the one that makes the decisions. And so it does help that, that my medical team knows that. Occasionally I have to remind them, and I'm not afraid to do that. But, I think that, again, this is part of that system that needs to change. And it first starts with us, bringing this issue to the forefront and speaking up and speaking out as one community. One of the cool things about the ADA and its passage was that it brought everyone to the table. It brought different disability rights groups like Federation for the Blind, Federation for the Deaf. It brought everyone together to speak up with one voice, one unified voice. And we're stronger together than we are apart. We can do great things when we work together to get things accomplished. And I want that to happen again. I think that that's what needs to happen in order to get these changes going.
Well, there's another question, but real quick, just because I'm going to, before I let you ask Alex, if you'll hang on, I'm going to read a couple of comments in chat because it kind of goes with what you were just saying. Kylie said, this hurts my feelings so much. You should be able to get what you need to help you live a more accessible life. There are so many people that struggle to get the equipment and supplies that they need. And Will said, gotta love insurance reimbursement limits, and then a frowny face. And then Kylie said, I agree, Melissa, there should be a way to provide those things for people. And Will, I definitely second that. Devin, I agree with that. Ashley Proctor, good for you. It's all about you. Then Will said, without the base ability to function, everything else is very difficult. And Lisa agreed, definitely stronger together. Alex had a question. Alex, are you there?
I'm here. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I could unmute myself, but I can. I actually had two questions. The first question, if you don't mind me asking, I'm just curious what your disability is. I can't remember if maybe I missed that, but I was.
I have cerebral palsy.
Oh,
I was
okay.
diagnosed at age 2.
Uh-huh.
And so that is my disability.
Oh, okay. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Mhm.
And I was also just kind of wondering, I mean, I'm so excited to read your book, and I have several kiddos in my life that I really, really want to read it as well. But I was just kind of curious, when you think about that day, other than, I mean, aside from just the obvious momentous things, what I can imagine that it really propelled you into a relationship with the disability community that has been so strong. I don't know. I'm just curious if you had any, like, if you met any friends that day that you're maybe still in touch with, or just any particular like little moments that you really treasure from that time, from that day.
Well, I do remember that it was one of the hottest days during the month of March. It was like 80 degrees. And so it took me about an hour to complete the crawl. And I'm actually, one of the things that I'm known for saying during the crawl is I'll take all night if I have to. And, I meant it, because even as a young child, I realized that that I wasn't just doing it for myself, but I was doing it for others. And one of the things that I remember that day was the fact that Congressman Major Owens, right before we did the crawl, led all of us in my favorite chant, "The people united will never be defeated." And then one of my mentors, one of my many teachers who I had in the disability rights movement was there. Justin Dart Jr., he did his speech right before we did the crawl. And I just remember being really excited to do this, not just for myself, but to do it for all of the other kids with disabilities who weren't there. It was very important to me to not just represent myself, but to represent them. And so that's why I was more determined than ever to make sure that kids with disabilities would be represented that day as well.
Wow. Such a cool story. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
When you were speaking, Will had a comment, one of the bad things about the disability movement question, and he said, we lose our iconic leaders early. So, I'm really excited. I know this summer I had ordered my own book, my own copy of this book, and I remember reading it, and I remember getting goosebumps all the way through. It really is just a great, well done book, as you had mentioned. The author and you and the artist, I think, captured it so well. And again, I don't know if some of you guys tuned in late, that the DD Council has gifted this book to all the public libraries for Oklahoma, and we will get it out to your libraries very soon. But I don't know if you wanted to comment on part of I think what's neat is that not only is there a book, but on your website, there is curriculum to go with it, if you wanted to talk about that.
You know, one of the things that I talked with Source was I wanted to make sure that this book would be used as an educational teaching tool to teach children the importance of the disability rights movement in it, you know, as part of American history. And so one of the things that we worked on was the Common Core Teacher's Guide for grades 1 through 5. It is a recognized full curriculum guide for those grades. And my goal is to not only have this taught in grades 1 through 5, but I would like to have it taught in all grades across the country, because I do believe that this is a very important part of America's history that needs to be recognized and taught in the classroom. And so that was one of my conditions for putting the book forth. I also worked very, very closely with Annette and Nabi and Source to make sure that this book was 100% accurate, and especially when it came to you know, my involvement in the disability rights movement from my 8-year-old perspective. I think one of the cool things about this book is the fact that this is the first time in 30 years that I have been able to actually share my story about my involvement in the Capitol Crawl and the disability rights movement, and from my 8-year-old point of view, so that, you know, other kids will learn about it too. So I am very, very proud of everyone involved in this project for their attention to detail, and you know, making sure that that it has Common Core teacher's guide that goes along with it. So I'm really, really happy about that.
Awesome. Any other last questions? And while you're thinking of your questions or comments, it doesn't have to be a question. I'll read a few more of the comments in the chat, just in case if you're not able to access chat, that way everyone can still hear what was said. Kylie says, that makes me so happy. I love that you aligned it to the Common Core standards. I will push this, and I'm hopeful that we can get this curriculum in our district over time. Lisa said, absolutely, Jennifer. Thank you so much. Educating others about the ADA is so important. Anna says, Mrs. Keelan-Chaffins, you are inspiring and empowering. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Delyn says, thank you for this. I'm listening with my 13-year-old today. And Janie mentions Jennifer Keelan-Chaffins. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible story. Loved your presentation. Your words, pictures, and advocacy truly make a difference. Any other questions or comments that anyone wants to share or ask our speaker before we say goodbye? It was mentioned earlier in chat if there'll be a certificate of attendance, and we will definitely get one and email that out to everyone in attendance. Very excited to have everyone join us today. Last call for comments or questions. Betty just commented. Betty says, thanks for writing this book.
You're welcome.
Well, Jennifer, I will let you, if you want to wrap it up.
Thank you guys so much for giving me this opportunity to speak with all of you. I greatly appreciate it, and I think that that everybody had some great questions and great comments, and I completely agree with all of you that that this is an important part of our history that needs to be told for generations, and so that we can continue to empower the next generation to use their voice to exercise and enforce their rights. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And thank you, Jennifer, for just giving us, talking to us about the disability movement and the Capitol crawl. And I think we're all charged. We need to keep it going. What do we want?
Access.
When do we want it?
Now.
There we go. All right, we'll try it again. Everybody unmute. If you want, you don't have to. What do we want?
Access.
When do we want it?
Now.
There we
Oh,
go.
and don't forget, the people united will never be defeated.
Yes.
Yeah.
United will never be defeated.
There
The
we go.
people united will never be defeated.
The people
People
united
united
will
will
never
never
be
Be
defeated.
defeated.
Well
Thank you guys
done.
so much.
Awesome.
Well done.
Well done. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day and week.
You
Thank
too.
You.
Great job, Jen. Thank you for bringing this to everyone.
You bet. Good to sort of see you, Kylie. Or not on screen, but that's okay. Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
I'll stop